Today, we're diving deep into a pivotal moment in modern history, exploring the complex web of events that shaped the Korean Peninsula in the mid-20th century. To truly understand what happened, we need to go back to the years leading up to 1950 and examine the motivations and political dynamics at play. It's a story of ambition, international power shifts, and deep-seated divisions. Let's start by looking at the situation in North Korea from the late 1940s. After the division of the peninsula following World War II, the leadership in Pyongyang held a strong and publicly stated aspiration: the reunification of Korea under its governance. This wasn't just rhetoric, it was a central pillar of their political agenda. Historical records, including declassified documents, reveal that internal discussions within the northern government frequently revolved around how to achieve this goal. The possibility of using military force to unify the peninsula was a topic that was seriously considered and planned for. The desire for one Korea, on their terms, was a powerful driving force, shaping their policies and military preparations throughout this critical period. Now, you go and talk about North Korea. During this time, without mentioning its most significant ally, the Soviet Union. After World War II, the USSR's influence in the region was immense. They established close political and military ties with the newly formed government in Pyongyang. This relationship was far from symbolic. The Soviet Union played a direct role in building up the North Korean military. They provided essential training for its soldiers and officers, and supplied a vast arsenal of equipment, including tanks, artillery, and aircraft. Diplomatic cables and meeting minutes from the era show a constant flow of communication between Moscow and Pyongyang. Soviet advisors were present on the ground, and North Korean leaders often sought approval and guidance from Moscow. This support was crucial, as it gave the northern leadership the confidence and the capability to consider more assertive actions. The Soviet Union's strategic interests in East Asia were deeply intertwined with the future of the Korean Peninsula, and their backing was a key factor in the unfolding events. While the Soviet Union was a major player, another monumental shift was happening right next door. In 1949, the Chinese Communist Party, led by Mao Zedong, won the Chinese Civil War and established the People's Republic of China. This was a game-changer for the entire East Asian region. The victory of a fellow communist power created a new, powerful ally for North Korea and altered the strategic calculations of every nation involved. For Pyongyang, this meant having a friendly, ideologically aligned neighbor with a massive, battle-hardened army. The new government in China provided a sense of strategic depth and another potential source of support. The relationship between China and North Korea was forged in shared ideology and mutual interests, creating a formidable communist bloc in the region. This new balance of power meant that any conflict on the Korean Peninsula would not just be a local affair but could potentially draw in its powerful neighbors, significantly raising the stakes. At the same time, there was a great deal of confusion and ambiguity surrounding the position of the United States. In the post-World War II era, America was still defining its foreign policy and its commitment to various parts of the world. There were mixed signals coming from Washington. Some policy statements seemed to suggest a limited interest in mainland Asia, while others hinted at a stronger stance against the spread of communism. A particularly famous speech in early 1950 outlined a defensive perimeter for the U.S. in the Pacific, which notably did not explicitly include South Korea. This created a perception, whether accurate or not, that the United States might not intervene if a conflict were to break out on the peninsula. This uncertainty was a critical element in the strategic thinking of North Korea and its allies. They calculated, perhaps incorrectly, that they might have a window of opportunity to act without provoking a direct American military response. This misinterpretation of U.S. intentions would prove to have profound consequences. Finally, we need to understand the fundamental division of Korea itself. After 35 years of Japanese colonial rule, the peninsula was liberated at the end of World War II, only to be divided at the 38th parallel by the Allied powers. The North, occupied by the Soviets, developed a communist state, while the South, occupied by the Americans, established a capitalist, pro-Western government. This was not just a line on a map. It was a deep ideological and political chasm. Both governments, in Seoul and Pyongyang, vehemently claimed to be the sole legitimate authority over the entire Korean peninsula. Neither side recognized the other, and both were committed to the idea of reunification, but under their own system. This created an environment of constant tension and hostility. There were frequent skirmishes and clashes along the 38th parallel in the years leading up to 1950. Division fostered an irreconcilable conflict, where both sides saw the other as an illegitimate rival that needed to be eliminated. This internal Korean conflict was the bedrock upon which all the other international factors played out. The dream of a unified Korea was shared by people on both sides, but the competing visions of what that unified Korea would look like made a peaceful resolution nearly impossible. So, when you put all these pieces together, you see a perfect storm brewing. You have a North Korean leadership with a clear mission of reunification, backed and equipped by the Soviet Union. You have the recent communist victory in China, which emboldened this ambition and provided strategic security. You have uncertainty about the American response, which created a perceived opportunity for action. And at the core of it all, you have a nation artificially divided, with two competing governments, each claiming legitimacy and viewing the other as an existential threat. These five factors: Northern aspirations, Soviet support, China's rise, American ambiguity, and the fundamental division of Korea, converged to create an incredibly volatile situation. Understanding this complex background is essential to grasping why the events of June 1950 unfolded as they did, and how they set the stage for one of the most significant conflicts of the 20th century. It is a powerful reminder of how local ambitions and global power politics can intersect with devastating consequences. Have you ever wondered what really started the Korean War? It wasn't just a single event on a single day. The story is much more complex, filled with ambition, tension, and a deeply divided nation. Let us rewind the clock and uncover the truth behind the outbreak of one of the 20th century's most significant conflicts. After World War II, Korea was split in two along the 38th parallel. In the years leading up to 1950, this dividing line wasn't a peaceful border. It was a flashpoint. All through 1949 and into early 1950, soldiers from both North and South Korea were constantly clashing. These weren't full-scale battles, more like intense skirmishes and raids. Each side would cross the border, engage in brief firefights, and then retreat. These incidents, happening almost daily, created a constant state of anxiety and instability. It was like a pot of water simmering, just waiting for the heat to be turned all the way up. Both sides were testing each other's limits, and with every clash, the dream of a peaceful reunification slipped further away. The leadership on both sides of the 38th parallel shared a powerful, common goal: to reunify Korea. However, they had completely opposite visions for what that unified nation would look like. In the North, the government envisioned a unified Korea under its political and ideological system. In the South, the government had its own ambitions for reunification under its authority. This fundamental disagreement was the core of the conflict. It wasn't just a border dispute. It was a battle for the soul of the nation. Each side believed its vision was the only legitimate one, making compromise almost impossible. These competing dreams for a single Korea set the stage for a tragic collision course, where the only path to reunification seemed to be through military force. Now, let's talk about the military balance at the time. The government in the North had been actively building up its military strength. With support from its allies, its armed forces became a formidable power on the peninsula. They were well-equipped, well-trained, and organized for a large-scale offensive. On the other hand, South Korea's military was in a much weaker position. Historical records showed that their forces were smaller, less organized, and significantly under-equipped compared to their northern counterparts. They lacked heavy artillery, tanks, and a powerful air force. This military imbalance was a critical factor. The South, while wanting reunification just as much, simply didn't have the capacity to launch a major offensive. This disparity in military power created a dangerous situation, where one side had a clear advantage and the temptation to use it was growing stronger by the day. Then, in the early morning hours of June 25, 1950, that simmering pot boiled over. The small-scale border clashes erupted into a full-blown invasion. A massive, coordinated attack was launched across the 38th parallel. This wasn't another minor skirmish. This was a large-scale, all-out war. The initial assault quickly overwhelmed the unprepared defenses along the border. The news sent shockwaves across the globe. What had been a regional tension point suddenly became a major international crisis. The world watched in alarm as the conflict escalated at an astonishing speed, drawing in major world powers and turning the Korean Peninsula into the first major battlefield of the Cold War. This was the moment the Cold War turned hot, marking the beginning of a brutal conflict that would last for 3 years and change the course of history. So, who was responsible? When you look at historical archives and analyses from international experts, the picture becomes clearer. The evidence overwhelmingly points to a premeditated, large-scale offensive launch from the north. Declassified documents and communications from that era detailed the planning and strategic objectives behind the initial attack, while both sides had engaged in provocations and held reunification ambitions. The scale and coordination of the June 1950 assault indicate a decisive move by one party to achieve its goals through overwhelming military force. Historians generally agree that while the situation was complex, with fault and aggression present on both sides in the preceding years, the outbreak of the full-scale war was initiated by a specific, calculated invasion. The international response was swift and decisive. The United Nations Security Council quickly convened and passed a resolution condemning the invasion. Because the Soviet Union was boycotting the Council at the time, they weren't there to use their veto power. This paved the way for the UN to authorize a military intervention to defend South Korea. Soon, a coalition of forces from 16 countries, led by the United States, was assembled and sent to the Korean Peninsula. This transformed the conflict from a Korean civil war into a global proxy war. It was a clear showdown between the communist bloc and the Western powers, with Korean lives caught in the middle. The intervention of these international forces dramatically changed the dynamics of the war, preventing a quick victory and setting the stage for a long, devastating stalemate that would ravage the peninsula. The Korean War raged for 3 grueling years, causing immense destruction and loss of life. Millions of soldiers and civilians perished. Cities were reduced to rubble, and families were torn apart by the fighting and the ideological divide. In 1953, the fighting finally came to a halt, but not with a peace treaty. An armistice agreement was signed, which created the Korean Demilitarized Zone, or DMZ, near the original 38th parallel. This agreement only paused the hostilities. It didn't end the war. Technically, North and South Korea are still at war today, locked in a tense standoff that has lasted for over 70 years. The DMZ remains one of the most heavily fortified borders in the world, a stark and constant reminder of a divided nation and an unresolved conflict. The legacy of the war continues to shape the politics of the region and the lives of millions of Korean people. So, when we ask what started the Korean War, the answer is layered. It began with a nation divided, fueled by competing visions for its future. Tensions escalated through years of border clashes and a growing military imbalance. Ultimately, it exploded into a full-scale war with a decisive invasion, which then pulled the rest of the world into its devastating orbit. The conflict's end left Korea permanently fractured, a painful legacy that persists to this day. Understanding this history is crucial to understanding the world we live in now. Thanks for watching. And if you found this deep dive interesting, be sure to like and subscribe for more historical analysis.